Hi, John.
Good afternoon or early evening.
Yeah. Dave McLean is in the attendee box.
Dave, I'm going to promote you to a panelist, and it may appear as though Zoom is shutting down, but it is not. Just let it continue.
All right. I think I'm in.
Great, Dave, and you'll be sharing your screen to present.
That's right, yes.
Okay, and you're comfortable with doing that?
I think so. As long as I hit the right buttons when the time comes, I think I'll be all right.
Okay. I'll help you through it if you need, no problem.
All right, that's good.
Stephanie, you have such a calming voice.
Oh, thank you.
So what we can start at 6:05 if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, it's 6:05. So welcome to everyone, both presenters and attendees. Welcome to our third development activities meeting. And since it's the third meeting, information about the Southside Community Council as a registered community organization and Southside organizations' involvement in neighborhood development will be posted on our website. And just to be transparent, we're in the process of putting that information there, and it's not there yet. So as we look at the agenda, Stephanie Joy will share with us how to participate in the virtual dam. We have 4 projects and they're listed on the agenda. And after each project, we will speak to next steps, just in case there are those of you that were interested in one particular project and do not want to stay on the call. And then we'll wrap up the meeting. And I did forget to introduce myself. I'm Barbara Rudiak, and I'm president of the Southside Community Council. And again, welcome to everyone. And I'm glad to see more residents on the call this time. So again, thank you.
And I'm Stephanie Joy. I'm your moderator this evening. I'm here to facilitate the conversation between attendees and the presenters and applicants. So after each presentation, we will invite questions and comments in this order. So the Q&A tool is enabled for you to ask questions. I will read these questions and then do my best to type in the response that the applicant provides. If you would like to ask a question, you may use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and then I will unmute attendees in the order requested. And for anyone calling in through the phone, if you press *9, that will raise your hand, and then I will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute you so that you can ask the questions. Also, please use the Q&A tool if you have any technical assistance issues, and I'll try to work through those with you. Please note that we, pardon me, we are recording this meeting, and Southside will put this on their website so you can view this another time as well. So our first project this evening is what I'm screen sharing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Oops.
Stephanie,
Yes.
hi, it's Anthony, the neighborhood planner for the projects in the area. I just wanted to also just say hello and then to let everyone know that I'm going to be taking notes for each of the projects and then forwarding that report to the various commissions, and the community council will also have a copy as well to post on their website, and the Department of City Planning also posts it there as well.
Hey, I'm going to pass it off to Gina
Yes.
to present on this project.
Okay. Basically, these photos are images of the property that we own at 2016 East Carson Street. We had painting done on the front of the building only, and these are images of what was done and the work and the wood that was repaired and replaced to restore it back to the original. Design-wise, nothing was changed. It was just strictly repair and basically just clean it up and paint it with fresh paint.
This is what it looks like now.
Yes. So this is all uncharted waters for me, so I'm not sure if you have questions for me or this is where we are.
One thing, Gina, what is the reason, like, do you have to go to a public hearing?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Do you need approval for this project from a board or commission from the city?
Yeah, if I can interject, Stephanie, the applicant is presenting to the Historic Review Commission for this work. It was already completed, but they still need to, go through that process even in this situation.
Bob, are they going to be asking for a certificate of appropriateness?
They should. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give a little bit of background. So they are in the East Carson Historic District. Any exterior changes to buildings in the district should file an application with the HRC towards a certificate of appropriateness. Even if you're repairing in kind, which seems to be mostly the case in your case, you didn't change anything in particular, you were repairing damaged work, and then you were painting the facade. Even though there's no kind of an approved color palette for the district, paint colors do get reviewed, and most work in kind, as you have done, is not controversial, and it's not an issue so much as you just didn't go through the process. So when we saw that picture I drove by that afternoon as the painters were up on the building, probably the day before. Actually, they were just starting to prime and paint. And seeing that you didn't have a C of A and didn't have a permit, we filed the 311 complaint to begin a process of bringing you to this moment where you kind of come through the system. In a best case scenario, you would have been ahead of the game and before us, before this all went down, and we could talk about certain things, and it probably wouldn't have been much of a problem. But it's just the fact you are doing exterior work. You should have gotten a C of A, should have been reviewed at the HRC and by this committee. Now that all the East Carson Street District applications go through local review during one of these dam meetings, and then on to HRC with our recommendations. So that's kind of the background of sort of why you're here, I believe.
Yes.
Second to that then, as we became aware of it, again, there's not anything that we have a real beef with. Typically in the district, you're not supposed to paint masonry materials. Now, we understand, and the way I saw it the day I went by and saw the painters going up and trying to decide if this was going to be a problem, and against the guidelines, was that the building looked like the brick had been painted a long time ago. Most of the paint had weathered off the brick. And if you had come before us before doing all the work, we probably would have asked and recommended that you gently clean the facade and strip the remnants of what little paint remained and restore the brick to the original brick, unpainted. But everything else you've done, you've painted the wood parts, you've fixed a lot of stuff. All these are positives, and we're not against any of that. That's we appreciate the investment in your property. It's just sort of procedural was an issue, and then it's your benefit to have the original brick cleaned and restored, because then you don't have to paint it every 5, 10, 15 years. The brick on that building probably has been enduring since the building was built, I'm guessing in the 1860s, 50s, 70s, somewhere, because it's one of the remaining 2-story buildings with a dormer in the district. They tend to be the older buildings. So it's an advantage economically for you not to paint it. Aesthetically, you have that choice. And because it had been painted, you could have pushed the HRC, and it would be up to them to decide ultimately whether they would allow you to paint it again. And you've used a kind of traditional paint color scheme. So you haven't done neon orange and green like we've seen on some buildings in the district. So that's not objectionable. You're in a kind of historic color palette. So again, a lot of this is just procedural to catch up with the process and have a chance to comment on this. And that's the only thing we might have changed early on, is just discuss the repainting of the brick. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add, but that's sort of the LRC's position on this.
Yes, I understand. We just don't know how to proceed or how we need to move forward.
So before we speak to that, does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Reminder, the Q&A tool is open for you to ask questions, or you can raise your hand.
Yeah, because I didn't have a raised hand icon to hit. That's why I did it old school.
John Martin wishes to speak.
Yeah.
Hi.
Along with Bob and a few other architects, I'm a member of the local review committee. And in this case, we were lucky in that the color combination tends to be, more traditional and more historic. So in this case, we were lucky. So as Bob pointed out, in some other instances, we've not been so lucky when people have gone ahead without proper approvals or following the procedure and have come up with inappropriate color schemes for these historic buildings. So.
Great. We also have a question from Mike McKay. So I'm going to unmute you, Mike.
I had a positive comment. I think it looks very good. And if I am correct, I believe that used to be the Gerson's Cleaners.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And not that it means anything, but it was the first job I ever held was delivering clothes from Gerson's Cleaners. I know it don't mean anything. I think it looks good. I think you guys have done a fine job.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
So, Stephanie, I guess we can go to the slide for next steps, but I think Gina's asking, as the property owner, what are her next steps? What are their next steps? And they,
Before we get to that, Barbara, there is a question.
okay, go ahead.
Q&A. There's a question from Kitty and Jeff. We applaud their responsibility in caring for their building. Are any other upgrades contemplated, and is there a way that the procedural matters can be publicized for building owners?
At this point, we have no plans on any upgrades in the future. No, not at this time. No, no, and we struggle with finding the way to even find the right person to talk to. We don't live in the city of Pittsburgh. We live in a borough outside of, 2 miles away, but we don't know your procedures. Finding it on the website, I am not that good at it. So it's extremely frustrating because I don't know, in the middle of COVID, all this phone call stuff. It was somewhat of a challenge. We were kind of lost.
And in response to Kitty and Jeff's question, the Southside Community Council this past year did work on the historic district guidelines, because there seems to be a lack of understanding that for some people, that we are in a historic district. And, at times there's turnaround with businesses and property owners. And because we've experienced this just in the last year with 3 or 4 properties, what I want to do, and I know that Candace Gonzalez from the Chamber is on the call, we really do need to at least get a letter out to property owners and then also to businesses, sharing the fact that East Carson Street and some of the side streets are part of the historic district. And before any work can be done on the outside, on the facades, it needs to go to the Historic Review Commission. It needs to come to the local review committee and then the Historic Review Commission. So offline, I'd like to work with Candace on that. And I know that Frank Vitale, who's on the call, is one of the committee members who was working on this over the last year. And I think we had done some work, and certainly COVID had put a stop to that. But it's important to note that the local review committee that we have and are grateful for are really good consultants on this work. But again, you have to know that they're there. And so that's what we'll be doing. We'll be working on in the next month or two. But I think you need to go on the website and look at the Historic Review Commission to see what you need to do to get on the agenda and work with them. And I can look at that too, Gina, and help you out on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And then for anyone else, if you have any comments for this particular project and you want to ask a question, you can use our email, info@southsidecommunitycouncil.org. If you wanted to make public comment, you can also send a letter to the commission. You can provide email testimony, or you can even join the virtual meeting when it does occur. So I think that's it for 2016 East Carson Street, I believe.
Barbara, if I can add one more thing for Gina,
Yes.
is that Gina, I'm not sure if you guys worked with Sarah or Sharon in our historic preservation office, but
Is her name Sarah Quinn?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, see, I had called her several times before this all started, and I never got a return phone call. That's why, you know, we kind of got the cart in front of the horse here, but I did try to reach out to her.
Okay, one concern could be, again, in COVID,
Yeah, I understand.
our offices are rarely, well, they're closed right now, so I'm not sure if she's coming in. Again, I don't know how that miscommunication happened, and like Bob was saying, we're just glad that this is working, even though it's kind of backwards. It's you know,
Right.
we'll work through this. But if you have, because I thought I saw an email conversation with one of the staff in the office and you guys. So even following up that way, but definitely your immediate next step would be to contact them to make sure you get on the agenda for their next meeting, which would be not until November, because this body in this meeting has 30 days to kind of, you know, talk through things, and it sounds fairly positive, but to be able to give any type of response if they so choose. So the soonest you guys would be on the agenda would be the November Historic Review Commission meeting, but they set that agenda, you know, early, so definitely give them a call or an email too, I'd say.
Okay.
And Gina, I'm connecting you with Sarah and Sharon, so look for that email tonight. So,
Okay.
but thank you.
Yeah, Barbara has that information too. Great, thanks.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everybody.
much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
You're welcome. So our next presentation is again regarding the historic district guidelines, and it's 1713, 1715 East Carson Street. So Dave, you're up.
All right, and let me see how I am. Share screen, I got it. And let's share and go to,
Looks great.
let's see here. Is it working?
It
And-
is.
All right. Good. Is everyone able to see that? That's just that lead-in panel there.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, this is for the property at 1713 and 1715 East Carson Street. And I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to present this. And a similar situation in that the owner of the building and the tenants of the building have applied for a certificate of appropriateness and will be presenting to the Historic Review Commission, and would like to, to present the ideas that we have in front of us for the building. So if I can, I will go. This is the drawing that we have, and again, I'm should interrupt just for a second. I'm David McLean of McLean Architects. We are also South Side people here. Our office is at 809 Bingham Street here on the South Side. So I wanted to present the intention, and what we have is the two buildings side by side. On the interior, they are connected into one tenant on that first level, and we have the intention to use a traditional raised wood panel approach to cladding the first level of both of the facades, and the drawing to the right of this is the drawing of the existing, where they had secured a building permit and without other paperwork had applied a ceramic tile to the faces of the building on the first floor level. Hence, in a similar situation to what the previous presenter was at 216 East Carson, kind of got ahead of the process, and in this case got ahead of the process with an approach that is not an acceptable one to the reviewers, et cetera. So that's why we were asked to take a look at this and would like to return the building to a traditional, more of a traditional treatment, and are proposing a raised wood panel. This is a detail of the proposed work on the building, and tying the two together somewhat with a similar treatment on the face, the face of the building, the first floor level. And what sort of the background of things is, this is a photo of the buildings prior to anything having been done. These, I believe, reflect improvements that were made to the building somewhere back, maybe 20 years ago or so. There was work done on the buildings that reflect what's here. Tile work on the 1715 building. The 1713 building was a little less altered, I think, at that time. Brick pilaster here, and then a marble facing below the window piece here. So the idea here is to use a traditional wood treatment here, overcoming the tile from before and bringing this along to that same level. So what we have here is, this is the picture of it now, as it is now, with the tile that was put on there more recently, which I think brought the whole sort of question of how better to do this. So that's, we can come back to any of these if you'd like, but that's the pictures of it as it is now. And we looked at the building, and I'm sure a lot of you know these basic ideas here, but a very traditional setup, and all the normal components that we would use on a traditional storefront, and taking those and looking at the idea of placing, and this is not a South Side building, this is just an image, placing the raised wood panel setup onto the buildings, so that we have a kind of traditional cladding on there. So that's just an image of where we would go with this in terms of panelizing it, and completing the two facades together. This, I believe, is the Smiling Moose, and it is somewhat indicative of what we would like to have here. Again, raised panel, and a wood treatment on the lower levels. So I have that just as a reference point. And then there will be an awning introduced to the buildings as well. And this is just a clip where awning use is again a traditional piece, and we are hoping it's a acceptable thing in terms of historic appropriateness to the building. So, and again, this is just an example. I believe this building's up in Beaver, I think, but it's just the idea of an approach with kind of a dual storefront, traditional wood cladding, and the awning, across the top there. So this is the owners were able to get an awning company to create a photoshopped version of the awning, and bearing with the view of the buildings prior to certainly the tile that's on there now, but prior to the wood work that we would be doing on there, that they would bring a continuous awning across the face of the two storefronts. And then we just go back to our drawing in case there's any questions about that. And I believe that is it. So at this point, that's pretty much my presentation. We can open it up to any questions or whatever, you'd like to do.
Great. I'm going to hand it off to Barbara and have her see if this team has questions.
Yep. So any comments from the local review committee?
Yes, if I may. So Dave, again, and for others watching, I guess it's sort of, want to start off with just an introduction of the historic district and why it was formed, just to be clear where our comments are coming from. So East Carson Street is one of the largest Victorian Main Street intact districts, certainly in Pennsylvania, and was nominated and awarded city designation in the 90s. And the whole point of this is really about preservation. We had such a large array of intact late 1800s, early 1900s group of buildings that a group lobbied very heavily. The neighborhood came together and formed the district through city council and everybody else to protect these buildings because they've lasted a long time. They endure and they give a character to the south side that many other parts of the town don't have. And the fact that they hadn't been messed with so much is one of the factors that come to why these collection of buildings are so valuable. So when property owners and tenants come in and in over a weekend put up a pretty egregious counter set of materials that aren't really appropriate at all, and then without permits and without reviews or anything, it's really kind of a shock to the neighborhood. And I don't know if any of the other public want to comment on that, but as a group at the LRC, who we've all worked in the district, understand the process, and it's gotten away from everybody. And I think we do have to refocus the effort as to whether or not this has to endure. But we don't see it as appropriate as the first step of simply replacing one set of inappropriate materials with another set of, maybe you might think, a more appropriate material, or you could find examples of things being stuck on facades at storefronts similar to this. But the point we want to make is the building on the left was almost in pristine original condition, except for the storefront had been modified, as you said, maybe 20, 25 years ago. So it's not appropriate to put the wood panels on the brick piers that flank the storefront that were originally brick and stone. We would advocate a more restoration approach and get the tile off the building, take the adhesive off the building, and try to restore and bring back as many of the original things that were there that hadn't been messed with over the years. Mostly the brick and masonry. The green tile that was below the storefront on the left is marble, and is sort of from the, I believe John might be able to pin it, 30s or 40s set of storefronts that came in to the district, and we consider it historic as well because they're of a certain period. But that green marble is underneath the tile and is underneath the adhesive, and it may come off fairly cleanly. That approach should be taken first to see what we can bring back of the original parts of the building, which is the historic fabric that is meant to be preserved. The one on the right was probably the second Nickelodeon in history. The original Nickelodeon with movies was downtown in Smithfield. And we believe this one was the second one in the city, and Warner Brothers was here. And that started the whole movie industry, the whole Nickelodeon phase. That one on the right was second or third in the city and in history. So it had been brutalized. It had been a Tom's Diner, and 20 years ago, it was restored somewhat to a degree that went through the whole review process and 2 or 3 times through the HRC to arrive at what was this at the time acceptable condition. And then all that is just covered up with all this other stuff. So we're advocating as the LRC to go back and pull the inappropriate materials off the building and try to get the adhesive off the original materials and see what's left and see then what the next appropriate course of action would be, and start from there, rather than just covered up with something else. As sort of, I understand, the easier way out and maybe less expensive way out. But the whole guidelines and district guidelines and designation is all about preservation. So let's see if we can get the original parts of the building back before we go covering them up all again. That's kind of in a nutshell our position. I don't know if John wants to add anything else.
Feel free to unmute yourself, John.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to also, I'm just in complete agreement with what Bob just said, but I would also like to comment on the proposed awning concept picture that you showed, in that awnings are permitted, but not permitted to go across two different buildings like that. I understand it's one owner and one business, but each of these buildings need to stand on their own merits. So having two awnings, with the name of the business instead of just one, they should also then also fit within the framework as defined by the guidelines. So that's a further comment on what Bob initially commented on.
Yeah, my last comment is, John and I and 3 other architects in the district, part of the LRC, work for free and volunteer our efforts to explain the guidelines, and we'd be happy to meet with you at any time to go through these in a more pointed way and kind of note by note talk about the approach to this and what we think might be more appropriate and more approvable down at the HRC. So we extend that to you and any other property owner in the district to meet with us. We know this new process now with these types of Zoom meetings has only been active over the past month or 2, but John's been at this since the district was started and predates the district with all his great work. And many of us have worked and been involved with this committee for 20 some years, 15 years. So we've been through it many, many times. It would offer any number of ways to review the guidelines with you and explain these kinds of things and where we're coming from and where the guidelines are coming from.
Right, very much appreciated. And I think the question, if I'm still on, the question is on the 1713 side, it's pretty clear, return to what was there. On the 1715 side, the tile as we see it under the awning in this picture, or if I go back to sort of the picture before the new tile, is that an acceptable situation there? I mean, that is the way it has been. Is that the idea there, that tile is to remain on there?
I guess I would say yes, because I believe 20 some years ago when these buildings went through their renovation, I don't recall, there may have been street face money involved with them. There may have been Main Street money. I don't recall, John may recall, but it's been too long and those programs are gone. But there was a lot of talk. And like I said, we went through the process through HRC at least twice because the original architect proposed something unapprovable the first time around. And that solution was agreed upon and approved. So if that is a possibility, yes, I would start there. If it's irreparably damaged or by pulling off the new tile, some of that tile comes with it and you can't match it for whatever reason, then we'll have another different conversation, I think. But for all intensive purposes, you're correct. The tile covers up brick. The original brick had been damaged, I believe, or something else had happened there where this was the solution that was agreed upon within the guidelines. So if we can get back to that as a starting point, that would be a slam dunk. No one would have any objection. You're just kind of restoring what had already been approved and had endured for any number of 2 decades.
I see. Well, yeah.
Now the storefronts themselves, I think, particularly the one on the right, had been altered and is not original. So if they want to, go a little bit further with that one, the guidelines will allow kind of, newer iterations on original material more contemporary changes to the building to have a little bit more flexibility to change them again, as long as they're kind of fit within the scheme of things. So we could have that discussion, certainly. But to John's point, the awnings that kind of tie two buildings together has been tried before in the district, and it's sort of the guidelines want each building, because they're distinctly different, and the elements on each building are distinctly different. So to try and pull them all together with one awning, great for the business, but it's inappropriate with the guidelines and with the kind of precedents within the district.
Okay, and I think the challenge is, I think it was what the owner and the tenants were concerned about, is that tile coming off. What is left behind there. So it seems that at the very least, exploratory removal of some tile is the. I'm clearly hearing the only recommendation of you folks, and it's very clearly understood.
Again, I think we're on a road to try and overturn again another kind of weekend improvements without permits, without consultation, that went very far afield, and without regard to the guidelines. So we'd like to pull that back, and again, take what you can off, see what's underneath it. We'll go from there.
Sounds good.
So we do have an attendee with their hand raised and question in the Q&A. So I'm going to unmute Mike McKay so he can ask his question.
Only question I had was about this awning. I might have missed something along the way, but the drawings don't indicate any awning whatsoever. And all of a sudden the picture showed with a big awning going over both buildings. Should that not be on the drawings if that's proposed?
I would think it should be, depending on, like, if within the historic context. Yes, I believe that what I was asked to do was get an appropriate treatment on the buildings, and then understand that there is an awning, that is to follow. And it sounds like what we need to do is make sure that it's done in such a way that you can consider the proportions and the placement of that at the same time. So we may end up with a drawing that shows the facade without the awning and then adds the awning to it. But that point is, I agree with that point.
Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you, Mike. Frank put a question in the chat. Are these two awnings or one?
They want one.
Okay.
I believe the intention was to have a single awning go across both of the storefronts.
Okay.
And again, I like right away say altered by the discussion we've had just now. So.
And
Again,
go ahead, Steph.
I was just going to say, if anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand.
And I just want to, I think, again, just emphasize that, those of us who live on South Side, and as you can see from Mike McKay, some of us have lived here a long, long time. We really appreciate the historic nature of East Carson Street. And when it was designated a historic Main Street and then given city designation, we had what an organization called Southside Local Development Company, and they were a paid group who looked at a lot of these issues that were occurring, may have been occurring on East Carson Street. And it's my understanding that one of the employees walked East Carson Street every week and looked at to see if there were any violations so that it could be remedied right away. But, my sense is that they also had the property owners, the businesses had an understanding that we were in a historic district. And at this point, and it's been a number of years, we are those of us on Southside that are part of community organizations and on boards, we are all volunteer. And those of us on the council, we focus on quality of life issues for residents. Part of that is the enjoyment of looking at these historic buildings on Carson Street. And the chamber works on, they're supporting their businesses, and they too, other than a part-time executive director, they are all volunteer. So, I can take responsibility for my board in saying that we do need to do a better job. And again, as I said, we'll be working with the chamber to collaborate and to take that on together. And, we also have to think about, and I may not know what I'm saying, but as a property owner, having an understanding of where your building is and all that, and the just about the neighborhood. So I think we need to do much more with that, and we'll do so. And the other piece is we are extremely fortunate to have the local review committee. As Bob said, they're a group of architects who live on the South Side and again, have that commitment to the historic district and also have the knowledge base. So as Dave, as Bob said, please reach out to them informally to discuss the plans that you're putting in place so that when you go to the Historic Review Commission, we can say that we're in agreement with what is being proposed.
Good.
I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A or attendees with their hands raised. Would you like me to share the next step screen, Barbara?
Yep, thank you. So again, if there are any additional comments, they can be shared with us at info@southsidecommunitycouncil.org. And this will be going to the Historic Review Commission. We have 30 days to continue with our review process, and also having the local review committee work with Dave on the design. And then the day of the review or prior to it, email testimony can be provided or attendance at a virtual meeting. So thank you, Dave, for your presentation.
Yeah, and thank you, everyone. Very much appreciated.
Okay, now we're heading closer to Southside Works. We have a project at, it has a number of different names, but we're going to say South East Carson and South 26th. So I think Jen, you're on.
Okay. Or Barbara, we could keep with the other, what was it? 2529?
2559.
2559. Yeah, that's actually in the presentation slide. But yes, as you said, there's multiple addresses or project names for this, but go ahead, take it away. Sorry.
That's okay. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, and we actually have it noted as 2529, so there's yet one more number associated with it. But hi, everyone. I'm Jen B. from Desmond Architects. I really appreciate you all taking the time to review this project. I am just about to share the screen here. Okay, can you see this all right?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'm going to switch over just to give you a little bit of context. As mentioned, we're right here on East Carson Street, and we're in between 25th and 26th Street here at Carson Street Commons. And this is the building block that we're working with. Our client is interested in renovating this bottom corner on the first floor, which was a First Commonwealth Bank, into 2 residential units down at the first floor. So that's just your locator. And here is a picture of the existing building. So essentially the First Commonwealth Bank takes up the first few bays here, as well as this corner, and it wraps around somewhat to this detail right here as far as the storefront presence. And while we're looking at this existing photo, I'm just going to point out a couple existing conditions to you because we'll be coming back. I'll be noting them as I walk through the project. One thing I just wanted to point out, this is an existing sidewalk. This little patch right here is a little strip of mulch. And it's kind of supposed to be, I would assume, just an extension of this mulch bed over here to the left of the sidewalk. And there is this row of existing trees. Also, you can take note of the existing awnings and these little flag signs. And I just also wanted to point out that a few bays down, the bank does have an existing ATM. And so I'm going to pull in this street view. If you can see right over there, that's the bay that contains the existing ATM. Okay, so I'm going to continue us through this presentation to give you a little more context. So this is a plan view of the building. Here's East Carson Street. At this corner is the Emiliano's restaurant space. And over here at the opposite corner is where we were going to transform this space into 2 residential units. The client, just for background info, our team did attend a pre-application meeting with the city for the project. And based on the proposed renovations, they did point out that we will need to go to HRC. And so my understanding would be that we would be asking for a certificate of appropriateness as well for this project. So continuing down into more detail. So here's the corner of the building. And as you can see, there is an existing recess at that corner where the First Commonwealth Bank entry is. This is that sidewalk. And the client is interested in removing this angle portion of the building and this sidewalk, which seems to have been a bit of a newer, this whole condition right here, I would assume would not be a historic condition, although we have not verified any of that, so we can dive deeper into that. But over on this far left bay is where the existing ATM is and some other bank related accessories. So we are planning on removing that section of this bay as well. Also, as you walk down the sidewalk here, there's a there's a sidewalk that heads back to the back side of this building. And there are 2 existing doors there. We're proposing to remove those doors and relocate doors so that they would work better with the 2 proposed units. This is where we would be providing an opening as well. As you probably noticed in the photo, it's a brick facade primarily on the street side, but in this little corridor, it's more of like a siding. And it seems as though it might even be a vinyl siding. We can show you a view of that as well. So this is to give you an update on the current design. We're still working through some details on the interior, but as you can see on the corner, we are actually proposing to infill this corner and we would match the storefront. We would create a storefront that matches the existing storefront along Carson Street. Same thing would happen where we're removing that bay with the ATM machine. And we also, this is the portion where that sidewalk was, we would infill that so it basically matched the existing planting bed along this street. Okay, so up at the top, this is the 25th Street elevation, and this is sort of the view of it for reference, but you can see how we're proposing to drop in a new storefront here. We would be removing the existing awning so that it would just be storefront remaining, but this is actually the existing storefront and paneling below that we would keep there. And everything, we're basically working within the existing lintels. And I think that's all for this one. You can see where we're proposing to remove that sidewalk. This reflects the Carson Street elevation. So on the left-hand side, this is where we would be insetting a new panel, a new storefront that matches the other panels in the facade. And this far right location is where we're removing the ATM and introducing the new panels again to match the existing bays. And we are calling to remove all of those awnings across the facade. I think that's all I need to point out on that one. And this is that narrow little sidewalk that wraps around the back of the building. It's basically existing siding. It's sort of a lap siding appearance. All of the gray is just existing. And this little sliver, this portion right here is brick existing. But we're proposing to infill with siding to match the existing. And we're dropping in some new windows that match the adjacent building as you continue down 25th Street. It's the same windows that they have included in other parts of the project. If you continue to the left here, that takes you back into the parking area for the development, just for your information. And this is just a view for context. This is the other end of the block at the Carson Street Commons development. The bottom was an older image taken from Google Earth. That was around 2008. And you can see there was an inset there originally. And here's an updated image in 2019 where sort of a similar thing took place for the Emiliano space, or it could have been a tenant before, but the corner was infilled. And then we have just a few contextual images of other buildings in the area, just pointing out that it's quite a variety of treatments. This is our corner right here. This is across 25th Street, what's existing. It's not really worth pointing out all of these. We just wanted to sort of capture some other conditions that are happening along Carson Street in the general area. So with that, I believe that's all of the information we have to share. So I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
So Barbara, I'll hand it off to you to see if the panelists have any questions.
So anyone from Development Review, Local Review, Community Council, please share questions or comments.
I have one question comment. I know currently the state of retail isn't doing very well because of various reasons, but this development envisioned retail being on the first floor with living quarters on the second and third floors above the retail. So what you're proposing is turning a corner retail establishment into a living quarter, correct?
It is.
I guess just from knowing the history of the site and the fact that we had tried to plan the development to be a continuation of the Main Street corridor, I have a few reservations about suddenly turning what could be a very integral retail corner into what amounts to an apartment. So I guess that's my general comment about the development as a whole.
Understood.
Jen, I'm curious for the transformation of this retail storefront fixed window space into a living space, the living room windows that face on the East Carson Street, are those operable or are they fixed?
Let me scroll there because I apologize. I'm sitting in for someone else, so I need to verify.
You're in the hot seat.
Yeah, just one sec. I know some other windows in the development are single hung, but these are different. These are more storefront. And so, yeah, my understanding is these are, and I should verify this, but these are storefront windows, and then there's operable windows in the back where the bedrooms are.
Okay. Yeah, it's just sort of, you know, the context of East Carson is this sort of commercial zone at the first floor level, and you know, an operable window into a, you know, someone's living room or kitchen is just kind of hard to imagine. But I guess it's also hard to imagine meeting the requirements for natural ventilation with only one, if there's only one window in the bedroom, how that whole, it's a code question, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm just not, wasn't expecting to see fixed windows, but yeah, that would be my outstanding question is,
Okay.
yeah, what's up with the windows?
Mm-hmm.
Operate, how they don't. Window treatments, I guess, you know, is that up to the tenant? You know, I'd expect they'd want some privacy from living, you know, in a fishbowl on East Carson Street.
Right.
Windows at eye level out to the side.
Peter, I just realized that was you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but hi. Okay, I appreciate it. I didn't realize that was
I don't know
you.
if you saw Zolo, Jen's dog was around here a little bit earlier. She just took off.
Oh, nice. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So anyway, those would be my questions.
Okay. Yeah, good, very good points.
If I may step in.
Yes.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
So yeah, it's a very interesting project because you are in the historic district. When Southside Works was developed, they extended the district up to 27th Street. To Marty's point, to kind of extend the historic nature of the district further. And it was already up to the Aldi building, so it was just kind of, let's get the other side of the street. So one neighbor across the street has, you know, doesn't have a separate set of conditions to the others, and we could control this a little bit more. District guidelines don't say anything about the use of, don't designate use of a building. So you're changing what has traditionally been a commercial retail first floor, which is common in the district, but there are a few residential buildings remaining where, you know, a resident lives at the first floor and the second floor, and then their front door opens onto Carson Street. And I suspect there's a number of storefronts now that are occupied as residences, legally or illegally. So the district guidelines wouldn't really speak to this other than you are sort of, you know, working with not changing the windows to residential double hung windows, but working with a storefront type of motif. But I think the use, to Peter's comments and Marty's, is sort of more outside the historic district guidelines and more to the community as to whether or not they want to start seeing the Southside Works commercial storefronts and all starting to turn into residences, and what is appropriate, both in its expression and also just in these kind of logistics. Yeah, you probably don't want your front door on Carson, right at the sidewalk, but I don't know if I want to go down the little alleyway either, although I don't know, Jen, if you have any views of that, like what is my front door experience? Is that like a covered walkway down the side, or is it a full alleyway?
It's pretty narrow here, I'll show you.
Oh,
Use it a lot to go back and forth from the garage. Actually, that's not a very good angle, but this gives you a sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Balcony above it. It's like
Yeah.
a double height.
Okay.
Perfect angle.
And there are no other changes, like there's those two inflow panels that sort of mimic the second floor. No change there to turn them into fenestration or windows. It's just the storefront changes right now.
At this point, that's correct, as currently shown.
Yeah. So we're in uncharted waters as far as the district guidelines go. I mean, I think you're being sympathetic to the first floor existing storefronts. So we can say that much. We're losing entranceways and vestibules. That's kind of quirky. We're losing this kind of open corner again, which was kind of a statement being made here in particular. Again, kind of quirky. But again, off the top of my head, and maybe John can pipe in one way or the other, there's nothing really in the guidelines that would tell us what to do here other than to try and be compatible. And these are new buildings, they're not historic buildings, but they were, designed to be compatible with the district guidelines to some degree, and therefore kind of play by those rules. But boy, this is curious, Jen. I don't know what to add. Maybe John could comment, but I think the community really has to decide whether we're going to support this kind of stuff and start turning all these storefronts into residences, and what then is the proper place for a front door and these other kinds of things, expression of a residential space inside a commercial, was designed as a commercial storefront. And start using doorways and vestibules and this connection with the street that the stores give you. But now with shades and curtains and other things now gets, the residents start turning their backs on what is a very public way. So the guidelines want more transparency and nothing on the windows. Let's see into the stores. Let's see into the transparency of the first floor is very specifically described in the guidelines as being, one of the key ingredients as to what makes the street work for pedestrians and as a district. So now we're going to start putting the shades up and drawing the blinds and losing that connection. So that's a one-off for you, no big deal. But we know from experience when one goes, we'll have dozens if the economics are driving this in the next few years, just as we have dozens of rooftop clubs and we have dozens of nano wall and any number of other things that have slipped in under the kind of, there's no guidelines, so let's let it go. We get dozens of them. And then after a while, you start to really feel the impact on the street and realize it's sort of detrimental. So I'm cautious.
That's understandable. It is. And it's, you wonder how quickly they can bring, it's sort of a risk of comparing a residential use to an empty storefront. You never, there's no guarantee. You don't know what the market's what's gonna happen. So, I mean, is there a possibility in saying, if something were to become a residential use, make it modifiable in the future, so it could be an easy return or something like that. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, this is John. I think given the circumstances, Jen, you've done an admirable job. You're repeating existing features. But I will point out that this has already been done in that complex. I don't remember the address, but the HRC already approved a similar change from retail to residential within this new complex.
Okay.
So precedent has been set. I've heard, it would be great to have retail, but as someone pointed out, retail is suffering these days everywhere, not just here. You go to New York and in Madison Avenue, every other storefront's empty. So you have either staring into a dark space, or at least with someone living there, there's going to be lights on. So it's not a dead space anymore. Some of these retail spaces could be dark for years. There are a number of storefronts already on Carson Street that have been vacant for several years now. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not in complete opposition, since Jen, I think, has done an admirable job. The one thing that I would be concerned about, I don't know, that little narrow alleyway to get into the very I hope that's lit up with like spotlights, because otherwise it could be very, very dangerous for anyone, male or female, entering, their unit from the back there. That would be one of the concerns I would have, that I would, have the landlord make sure that that's floodlit back there to eliminate any kind of issues.
Agreed. We did discuss that. I apologize, I didn't point that out.
So we have a couple of questions, and we have Mike with his hand raised. So let's see here. Do the owners no longer feel that they cannot get retail or commercial use? There are enough apartments there, and we need to be more aggressive in getting retail into the Southside Works area.
it is a good point, and I honestly can't answer that question for sure. It's only my own interpretation of, you know, why they've decided to go this direction. I would anticipate it would be based on their knowledge of the market and what, you know, what they think they can activate. But that's only my perspective.
Okay. And First Commonwealth just closed. Why do they want to turn it into apartments so soon without trying for retail? Similar, I guess.
Yeah, it is a good point, and I can't say for sure, but I do know that, you know, when they know that leases will be terminating, you'll be reaching the end of the lease, the developers will take a lot of effort to reach out and try to line other folks up ahead of time. But this is only, you know, it's only my interpretation. But I would imagine they had heavy efforts in that, and they decided that they're, you know, there's a better chance in activating it with the residential use.
And another question from the Q&A, would garbage from these two new apartments be collected in the rear along with the other apartments in this complex?
It's a good question. I'm assuming yes, but I will definitely verify that from them because I know that's where they collected for the other units. I'll find that out for you.
And you'll share that then with Barbara too?
Absolutely.
And then Mike, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
Okay, the one question is about parking. 2 extra units now there, and I know that kind of the parking in the back, every apartment has a designated spot. So of course they would have to come up with 2 new spots for parking. The other comment was that I kind of understand that, you know, if you walk up and down Carson Street, you see many darkened businesses, and obviously for whatever reason, rental units are filling up faster than they can build them. So I guess it kind of makes sense. I hate to see that continue, but if this place is, as somebody mentioned, the second one to go from resident or from commercial to residential, I hope it don't go much farther than that, but I can understand the logic behind it because, like I said, the apartments are filling up and the storefronts are getting dark. That's all I had there.
True. Thank you. And we will, yeah, we'll verify the parking for you as well. Our understanding is they will be parking in the parking lot, but yeah, we can just get that verification for you that they do have the 2 extra spots provided for them.
Jen, it's Kathleen from Southside Community Council. Is that still a bus stop in front of that location, or have they removed that bus stop?
Honestly, I don't know. This does say 2020.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they, I believe it's, I don't know if it's still a bus stop or not, but I mean, that's one thing that you may want to look into prior to making this a residential location, because if it's still a bus stop, they're going to have, you know, quite a bit of people standing in front of their apartment. And you know, when it's retail, it doesn't matter, but when it's an apartment, you know, it could get loud in front of their apartment.
That's a
It'd
good
be in a bus stop.
that out.
But I'm not sure if it's still a bus stop or not, because I know they removed one, and I'm not exactly sure which one they removed.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I'll talk to them about it.
Any additional questions?
I have another comment, Jen. If you could swing your street view back down, what, 25th, is that 25th Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, stop there, and if you could spin it around a little bit. Yeah, if you, a little bit back. A little bit to the left. Okay, good, thanks. How these other units have an address on 25th Street, and would it be possible for at least one of these new units that is being proposed to also have an address on 25th Street? would that make it more homey or more marketable or more conducive to a long-term tenant instead of somebody whose front door is on an alley to a garage and whose living room window is on East Carson Street, you know? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
more attractive dwelling unit if it had a residential address instead of a commercial.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
But that would only work for one of the apartments.
Right. That's half of them.
Yeah. So, you know, if your client is interested in tampering with that brick wall a little bit, you know, maybe it's possible to repeat the pattern you see to the left here.
That's a point very well taken. So yeah, that leads me to, I just wanted to get your feedback on would you all be amenable to us looking at modifying this somewhat to work within, you know, an existing opening, that sort of thing, so that you could come straight out to the street?
Well, I sure would, because it would say residential address.
Yeah.
I think that would be the right sort of body language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Peter, I'd concur, and it's sort of the itchiest part of all this is having the doors to these units down that little alleyway.
I know.
Having lived in New York City and now on the south side with my front door on the street, I'd much rather pull my keys out and go into a doorway on the street where more people have eyes on me than to walk down that little place, you know, at 3 in the morning. So, and that's where I'm kind of coming back to precedent again. If we're going to start seeing more and more of these coming, sooner or later we'll confront one kind of a commercial historic building with a historic storefront turned into something of a residential building. I would really ask your client, you know, is there a market, you know, is it really detrimental to have the entrance off the street, off even Carson Street, and to treat this so it reads a little bit, not as a commercial storefront, but as a residential place, but not have to kind of turn its back on the street and take you down a place that doesn't feel good. That's, Peter, that's the itchiest part of this whole scheme.
Yeah, you know what I think the original thought process was? I'm sorry, John, I'll be very short, but the concern with changing the existing storefront, you know, I think that was the reasoning. So if there's, you know, in comparing those two options, if we look back and say, well, maybe we do transform, you know, these two, you know, well, at least one of them, the one in the center at least, so it looks a little bit symmetrical as a residential, and this one would sort of be the side of that, you know, the 25th Street residence. Do you all think that's a more positive approach, you know, like a better approach?
I think the body language would be much better, and I think they'd have much more marketable apartments.
Mm-hmm.
People would want them instead of settle for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of with Peter too. If you had and you're kind of going to break ground here, Jen, and you know, I'm glad to have you breaking the ground in your group. There's some way to make an Uber storefront ground level Carson Street apartment. Not, you know, to Peter's point, just around the corner. Those doors all open up on the street. They're just, you know, 50 feet away from Carson Street. It's not much quieter down there. There's something there worth exploring.
Yeah, this is John again. That precedent project that I mentioned, they did have doors right on entering the apartment from Carson Street. So yeah, I think that is an option to pursue. I think if you try to make the entrance on the side, you know, you have a different scale of commercial windows, and if you go back to where Peter was looking earlier, I think it would be inappropriate to sort of start putting those small residential windows in that space. There would be completely inappropriate. So you'd have to go to windows and a door that would be similar to what's above, you know, larger scale.
Right.
So
absolutely.
the way the apartments are laid out, you don't be able to go to the one unit. you know, so, but maybe your best thing is to keep the both entrances on Carson Street to be consistent.
Yeah. Good points.
So we have a couple more questions in the Q&A. Well, this first one is a comment noting that at a bus stop you may have some odor as well. And then asking do you know if additional trees will be planted on the extended green area? Is that the expectation?
That was the preference. I asked the client about that today, and he said he likes that idea of just continuing that residential feel up to the end of 25th Street to the, you know, to align with the building facade. It seems as though it would be one more tree that they add, and then they could look into, you know, lower foliage. See, it seems like it's kind of missing one right here. If that becomes residential, that could be something that they do. And then this tree concerns me. We'll just check the condition of the existing tree. This one wasn't looking so good. So.
Okay. And Mike McKay also raised his hand, so I'm going to enable him to speak.
Yeah, I guess a comment would be that having the entrances to the two apartments through that alleyway, I'll call it, on 25th Street, I don't think it's very uncommon, because if you go up to the second floor and the third floor, I think their entrances are also accessible from that little alleyway.
It's true.
Yeah, through there.
I guess.
And yeah, I did census work there last year, and I went through all these, and I did many of the entrances were inside these alleyways. I'll call them, for the second and third floor apartments. So adding doorways for these two apartments down on the first floor through that alleyway, I don't think it's should be an issue at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. It definitely, maybe the difference in the upper floors is you're not down on the street level, so you're a little bit separated from the public. But yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of little nooks in the south side that has these sort of secondary entrances. Yeah, it's what you think whoops, I'm lost. What you think the resulting Carson Street facade will be if we maintain the entrances at that sort of back area.
There you are.
Sorry. Unimportant. But so yeah, I am gathering that there's a sort of a mix of opinions. But it may be worth, since there's interest in developing the facade on Carson Street to see how it would accept new residential entrances. We're happy to study that for you and maybe, you know, share a sketch back with whomever we're supposed to reach out to compare, if you're interested.
Yeah, that would probably be me, and then I would share it with the group.
Okay.
And any other changes that you may be thinking about as a result of the discussion here.
Mm-hmm.
The one advantage would be that you would end up with larger bedrooms and more
Yeah.
closet space, etc. So
Absolutely. Less awkward corridors.
yeah.
Yeah.
You might also check with the HRC to check on that precedent one and see how they did
Yes.
the doors.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Great.
So again, this will be going to the Historic Review Commission, and would I be correct also the the Planning Commission?
Yes, we do anticipate going there as well.
Okay. So again, comments can be made to us using our email address, and then, you know, we will, you know, once a date has been assigned for both the Historic Review Commission and the Planning Commission, public comment can also be made.
And Jen, can you just clarify what approvals you're seeking from the Planning Commission?
I honestly don't know that I can tell you that right now.
It's Anthony again, the neighborhood planner. The approvals for the final land development plan, because they're in that section or.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate your time, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay. Bill, if you're still with us.
Yes, we're still here, last but not least.
Yes. And so you can share your presentation. My understanding is you're going to give a bit of an overview of just that green space and then zero in on the dog park.
Yes, definitely. So Philip Wilkinson from AE7 Architects. I have with us tonight Teresa Bucco, who is also from our office. And then representing the client from Samara Road, we have Jonathan Reese. And then from Canada Development, who we're also working with, Allison Goss. So they're both here as well. So we're happy to present the project to you and talk to you about what we're doing and really trying to bring more energy and life back to the Southside Works public space. So we have two presentations to talk to you with. One is about the open space overall, kind of a programming master plan per se for the project, and then specifically about the dog park. So can everyone see my screen here?
Yes.
Great. So working with Jonathan and Allison, we've been looking at trying to reprogram and bring energy back to the public open space, providing opportunities for people to engage with the space more than there is right now. The Tunnel Park and the town center, great aspirations. However, there's not as many uses that we'd like to have. So what we're looking at in doing this is an overall plan for bringing life and energy back to the town center through games and F&B kiosk and a lot of open seating. Along the Tunnel Park, it's three kind of different parcels. The center parcel, which we're going to talk about in more detail, is the dog park. And then to the east, River Green, which is really kind of a temporary parcel, some active play, idea of beach volleyball and some seating. Lawn East, just some entry sculpture. And then to the west, the playground, reactivating this with a reimagined playground. There's a playground currently in the spot, but try and give it kind of an overhaul to make it much more engaging and creating more of some trails and ways to engage with the public realm and the natural environment through this idea of this adventure trail. We've been looking at this in detail, trying and put a lot of the life and activity along 27th Street as it connects in and connects out to the Heritage Trail. So we're trying to flank 27th and as well as surround the town center with active uses more than just lawn or green space that you see there right now. As part of the overall strategy for the program, we are trying to embrace opportunities for public art within each parcel and each kind of piece to the plan, whether that's sculpture or other sort of art. You see here in Pittsburgh, you know, the clouds and lightning bolt is really about a bike station to lock up your bike, or other stuff like that's done in Chicago or New York. And to try and enliven each of these parcels to bring energy back into the center to bring people in. So that's through art. Through games and activities and engagement, And we're really trying to make it fun and inviting, so people do use the space and come back down and circulates throughout Southside Works. So the idea of beach volleyball, playful games, places for interaction, places to kind of hang out through, casual seating or fun seating zones are being used on each of the parcels in various ways. We're trying to bring opportunities for social engagement as well as actual activities to the park and providing venues for those through looking at each of the public spaces. For kids, for families, ways for the public to engage in health and wellness activities like yoga on the green or music, as well as places for bikes and people to walk and generally live in the city. So what we have is a quick overview of kind of each parcel. The dog parcel, we have obviously much more detail we're going to get to in the kind of second package we have here to discuss tonight. Big picture, it is a dog park with an activation pavilion at the west end and a plaza out in front. So you can come down and have your dog run around free within a gated zone, as well as come out and have a coffee or a way to engage right at in the tunnel park. The different precedents for that is ways of having the cafe integrate in a way that you could sit on the dog side or on the public side and separate those, looking for a more industrial aesthetic to the structured elements that we're proposing for the park. And then a few obstacles and other areas for the dogs to enjoy, run around, and engage with their owners. The lawn west, which is to the west of 27th Street. Currently, this is the kids' playground, and I believe there's like a little chess game there as well. And then the west side of this is really just a green. We are looking at part of this parcel is creating a more active trail, bringing some of kind of the more forested or ideas of kind of a nature trail back into the city for engagement and developing that in partnership with REI, but that's completely a public kind of use area. Community green and other ways of interacting with the new apartment complex that's being proposed on the north side. As part of this, we are investigating if it's possible to reduce the tunnel boulevard from two sides to one side. That's part of an active discussion we're looking at right now, where we have some further details we look forward to presenting you, but right now this is just kind of giving you a picture of what we're looking to do to try and create a more engaging public realm on the west parcel. The ways we're looking at integrating with children is more sculptural play, more appropriate to the city and embracing of arts, for kids of all kind, and make it much more part of the kind of extension of the natural environment, not just picking up a place set for kids from Home Depot and putting it in the park. So really trying to make it respond to its urban context. The River Green, which we called it, is really, kind of a very short-term use to gain kind of ways of engaging play in the site with a lot of, not a lot of expense. We're looking at proposing kind of volleyball, kind of tiki hut aesthetic, some casual seating, as well as an outlook looking over the Heritage Trail by the Crucible sculpture. And that's a way just to activate this parcel rather than just leave it as an empty parcel. This would be ideal for future development in the coming years. So kind of high yield, low impact. And then in the town center is really the heart of the project, really trying to bring back in as much energy and ways of engaging with the public as possible. So the key kind of program uses for this are F&B kiosk with a lot of outdoor seating. That's especially relevant with our response to COVID and outdoor dining. So really trying to make a place for that so people can gather outdoors year round. The idea is that you could have a farmer's market in here. I know there's been some in the past, but just seeing how that continues to leverage its use. Bocce or cornhole or other games that could be played. The site does slope. So we're looking at, how do you integrate a gathering stair and a possible pavilion, reimagining this as a much more flexible pavilion for events all times of the year, embracing a lot of open seating that's flexible and movable. And then signature sculptures. We know we're probably not the same scale as Amish Core in Chicago at Cloudgate, but that idea of an engaging sculpture that makes it fun and really want you to be to go see that place. We're looking at multiple uses as in here during the summer months as well as the winter, and trying to really programming it for being used as much as possible. A lot of precedents for that we list here in Nashville and Cleveland, and as well as New York City. So really trying to make this as public place as possible where to engage with the community and really the center destination reimagined in Southside Works. The structures that we're proposing are kind of industrial aesthetic that would be appropriate to scale of small F&B venues with most of the seating external with some shade structures, open seating year round. The open seating would be looking to be protected through kind of solar screening, as well as the idea for protection against rain, but as open as possible year round. And then making it something that's, fun for people to come to, and they come from outside of the city as well as locals to come to and engage within Southside Works. The plan that we're looking at here is keeping kind of a green in the center, which would be flexible, anchored by a stage to the north with cheesecake, which is not kind of part of the scope. We're looking at kind of everything south of that, trying to maintain as much of the brick sidewalk that's already there. You can see that's in the pink color. And then we have 3 venues that are kind of facing an internal square with a trellis structure with seating throughout. The terrace steps face into the green as it slopes kind of a little higher towards the northwest of the site, opening up the corner at Sydney and 27th to kind of a signature sculptural piece or active pop-up seasonal activities. The kind of industrial containers or constructional look would have some internal seating, but mostly external seating. We're trying to maintain Tour Pittsburgh as a tenant, but still keep them as part of the scheme, but move them and relocate them kind of to this corner to the east. And then just kind of engage the site throughout to make it as transparent as open. We are trying to preserve all of the existing trees, I think, except one right now. There's one existing tree we're proposing eliminating, but then putting appropriate landscape back in its place to still keep it as kind of treed as possible in a public setting. So this is the quick overview of the overall kind of programming master plan. As part of that, we wanted to tonight talk about the dog park specifically as the kind of the tunnel park parcel that's leading off the development is kind of the easiest as far as us to move forward as part of the planning in the overall site.
Yeah, and Phil, if I can just interrupt for a moment, we wanted the overall overview just to give some context with because there are a number of different projects, and those of you that were on the July 2nd dam, we did talk about the town center, the town square, and some changes have been made, and this is I want to say a revised version, but we'll talk about that more at a different time. So the focus now will be on the dog park, and because it is 20 to 8. So we don't want to be on till midnight.
Yep.
Okay.
So the dog park is the key focus, just trying to set the stage here for what we're doing in activating the public realm. The existing tunnel park There's several trees. There's an existing kind of path, the steel columns that are historic kind of artifacts. And then there's two trellis structures to the west, and then kind of a plaza. It's kind of a funky connection between the site from the sidewalk point of view. There is just a sidewalk on the east and the north side. There's no sidewalk on the south. It's part of the original overall plan. The site kind of slopes into the center with a gutter kind of in here. We are trying to maintain as much as possible, but then activate kind of the west side as part of the design. You'll see that as we go forward. So the main program elements are going into is using the space, keeping the trees and most of the elements in place, and using this for the community to bring their dogs into the park, as well as having a place to sit and gather in kind of community. So the dog pavilion here is a place for a cafe and a small pop-up retail opportunity that could be seasonal or long-term, with both sides of the container activated by seating. Now this seating is outside of the dog fence. This seating is inside the dog fence. It's split into a small dog zone kind of to the north, to the west, and then the rest of it is kind of a large dog zone. Each of these would be located with a dog appropriate gate and vestibule as you go in, not to let dogs in or out. The small dog area could also, act for kind of a smaller zone for dogs, or even training individual dogs if you wanted to. Not part of the overall strategy. We are trying to keep the existing steel columns as kind of little colonnade. The two existing trellis-like structures, we're proposing to reuse them over kind of the pergolas over the entries as part of the project. And then really activating the corner here and connecting the sidewalks throughout with the paved surface. We do have an entry to the east, and then entry mid-block, and the entries to the west, working with that. We are proposing a new sidewalk on the south side, so the green does not come up all the way to Tunnel Boulevard. This is kind of the overall three-dimensional view of the project. From the west side, which is we're trying to keep all of the energy right at 27th and like an active corridor out to the Heritage Trail and back to Carson Street. So you see here opportunities for sculpture or kind of an art piece, an open plaza for seating, a lot of open seating. And then this is the container that we're looking to have a cafe and then kind of a pop-up tenancy. The cafe would serve both sides, both the public side, and the public side is part of the kind of the dog park with appropriate high fence that moves back, with the trellises repositioned and reused that are currently in this position further in the park. Again, trying to maintain, I think, all of the existing trees. I have to confirm that with just right here, but we're trying to have to the west of this is really new. To the east is mostly a fence that's kind of going in and around, as well as the new small sidewalk in this zone to the east. The materials that we're looking at are in development, but as part of it, it's kind of a corrugated metal and wood look with opportunities for art and accents is within the overall container aesthetic. And this would allow it to be open and closed during the day and during night, closed down when it's not being used. The existing conditions you can see here, where there's these small trellises here and here, a seating zone, and then kind of a garden space with connection to the surrounding sidewalks. And then this is the proposed look for the corner, activating it with the kind of cafe bark here, which is the generic name for the cafe, with a pop-up or an art panel that's part of it as an opportunity for kind of cultural and public art expression, and then the tenancy to the north. A view from the northwest, and this is kind of the proposed look again of the dog tenancy and the container, and through its active plaza, really open to the public as much as possible. and then kind of looking in. So it's a modified container sitting lightly on the ground with kind of two tenants, essentially a pop-up tenant and then the cafe tenant, which would service both sides. These are just some other views of the proposed structure that's part of the overall design. The intended look and feel for the overall project. We talked about the retail containers, looking at movable seating throughout the plaza, some benches and fun site furniture, umbrellas, and then dog benches within the park. Obviously trash recycling, and then any of the appropriate containers that are needed to take care of dog waste. We are looking for, a mix of stone dust trails as well as exposed aggregate concrete, stone dust inside the dog park, in the tunnel park, mixing of tall grasses. The perimeter fence, trying to be as simple as transparent as possible, as well as economical, considering the length it's going throughout. Looking for some dog obstacles to make it playful and fun with inside the dog park. And then using all 4 trellises, reusing those, not destroying those in the park. And then the container itself, looking at a mix of modifying an actual container with color and graphics and making it usable year-round, and then making it open and transparent on both sides. A mix of kind of corrugated and steel aesthetic, kind of building off the idea of the industrial, post-industrial past. So that is the dog park. I'll go back to the overall view, which is probably the best thing to help answer questions on. And then we also have Jonathan, Allison, and Teresa if there's additional questions that come up that we need help answering.
So I'm going to defer again to the Development Review Committee and Community Council first for questions or comments.
I have a couple of comments. After 20 to 30 years, it's very encouraging to see a comprehensive plan put together to try to activate that Tunnel Park, Tunnel Boulevard area. I know over that time span, there have been some isolated attempts, but obviously nothing really worked. So it's encouraging to see your plan. Hopefully it will work as well as you're hoping it will. My one question about the areas being programmed for children, have you included any thoughts as to whether you're going to program for children with special needs or autism or sensory issues?
Well, as knowing that we're trying to speak to the dog park, quickly, when we've been looking at the playground, we've been trying to make it an accessible playground for all. And that's something that we can get more specifics to, whether it's autistic children or with special needs, but we're trying to make it a fully accessible playground, those with needs and with fully ambulatory.
All right, and I guess specific to the dog park, obviously you're in discussions with regard to maintenance of that area on, I would assume, a daily basis or even throughout the day. Removal of waste, for instance, is one practical thing that pops into mind.
Yes, and that is something we've thought about long and hard, with dog waste and how it's treated, the surface and the maintenance that goes along with it. The trash receptacles and trying to make it as clean as possible is something that makes it a place that people want to go to. So it's in our best interest to keep it as clean as possible as well.
All right, thank you.
Philip, I had a couple questions, Kathleen from Community Council. So you showed in your presentation, you showed benches and umbrellas and stuff like that. Now, will the benches be throughout the dog park along with the umbrellas, or will they just be in the seating area for the cafe?
Well, we're proposing benches throughout the dog park, in and out. As far as the umbrellas, I don't know specifically where we're proposing to put them. I know we'll probably have some in the plaza to the west to shade you during the day. We're trying to use the trellis shade structures within the dog park to provide those kinds of shading zones. So it's predominantly the umbrellas would be part of the seating areas and the groupings to the east and the west of the container itself.
Okay, but you will have benches throughout the dog park for people
yes.
to sit down when they have their dogs.
Yeah.
Roaming around. Okay.
And this
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to make it comfortable for the owners as the dogs. It's in the best interest to make it a place people want to hang out for several hours.
Okay. And how many entrances will you have for the dog park?
Sure, we have 3 entries. So we have, I'll just draw one here, which you enter through the dog-friendly area, then into the park. And we have these, call it vestibule areas here and here. So there's one to the east, one off of kind of Cinema Drive, and then one right off of the west end.
Okay, thank you.
and additionally, sorry, this is Allison from Canada Development. We have the natural tree lines and the shade within the park that'll help provide that coverage that the umbrellas would.
Yep. Yeah, so we love trees and trying to keep them and use what we have.
Which, yeah, those are existing.
Are there other questions?
We do have some in the Q&A. Was there any consideration for incorporating circuit workout stations throughout the park?
I think we haven't looked at specifically a circuit for running. As part of this, right now we're part of the Heritage Trail, and connecting to it. So we're assuming that most of the circuit is really part of the trail and running. The tunnel park isn't very long. We are trying to incorporate active play in the playground, and what we talked about is kind of this adventure trail. So it's more using physical surface in the landscape and using that. But at this point, we're not planning on kind of circuit exercise equipment in the tunnel park and the town center.
Great. Like Thomas likes the removal of Cole Place and adding the turnaround at the end of 27th Street and giving a view to the river. Jeff and Kitty say, very impressive, sounds like a lot of fun. Are there any provisions for restrooms?
That's a great question. We are providing restrooms. We're looking at doing the restrooms not as part of kind of the installations, but looking to take advantage of the house retail space that is not used and making it publicly accessible. The concern there is obviously full season restroom facilities. So as part of the buildings, we think it's better suited to keep those inside, but then they'd be accessible to the outside. And we're trying to accommodate the restrooms that would essentially accommodate the town center and a medium-sized gathering for the town center in those restrooms.
Thank you.
The restrooms would serve the playground, the dog park, and the town center. Everyone knows that you're at the playground, no matter what, your kids got to go to the bathroom. So we're trying to make sure you're not using a retail shop owner's restroom or having to go into a restaurant. And so those are critical to kind of the overall master plan to the public open space.
Another question here. Rather than a permanent container, have you looked into the food cart culture that's so popular in Portland and elsewhere?
We've looked into that. Allison is representing Canada Development, which is a F&B consultant that owns and operates as well as develops F&B venues. We're looking into really the size of it. So that one it's a more permanent structure in that rather than like a food truck or a cart. And so that's just trying to accommodate the size and what needs to be as part of a cafe. in a sense that's something that it feels permanent, but still is a very easy installation in the site in the dog park.
Okay. And Philip pretty much hit it on the nail on the head, which it has a similar spirit to it, but it just has a little bit more of a permanent structure presence to it.
Great, thank you.
Philip, hey, Jackie Kaiser, Community Council. I think the proposal is great. I think that if you ever walk down there, the amount of people with dogs is incredible. And to give them this amenity, not only for the residents down there at the South Side Works, but for everyone else in the South Side, I think it's great. I think it's a great draw for people outside of the South Side as well. I'm curious about the surface material in the dog park itself. Is that going to be natural grass till it's basically dead, right? Because it's a dog park, it will get trashed. Or are you proposing a synthetic material there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've thought about that long and hard. Because of the length of the dog park, we are proposing keeping grass. It is very active and exciting, and everyone uses it and gets a lot of use. That's the best thing that would happen, and then would maintain the grass accordingly. If it got to the point where the grass is completely dead, that means that it's really super active. And I know then that would be the best thing that Jonathan Allison could want, and then they would plan appropriately to figure out a better material. But right now we're proposing keeping it natural grass, which also helps with kind of water infiltration. It is over the train line. There's a considerable amount of depth that they have in between there. But for right now, we're proposing keeping it natural grass and then having that kind of the decomposed granite walkway inside the dog park.
Right. Yeah. Well, while the natural grass could get messy after a while, the synthetic, even if it's done well with the multiple layers, almost something that you'd find comparable to like the Heinz Field or an athletic facility, sometimes those can get stinky over time. So that's why I was asking the question, and this is like full sun 24/7 in this little strip of land. So
yeah, the dog pee is something you do have to worry about, and it's a very robust system. If you're going to really take care of that in a way that is artificially maintained, but it's something that's part of the overall maintenance plan that we're planning to put in place to make sure it's upkept.
Thank you.
This is Marty Urim from the review committee again. With reference to the previous questions about the facilities, for people, restrooms, if you will. Have you given any thought to coordinating or working that along with the riverfront trail system? In the past, there has been discussion about making sure there were restroom facilities for people on that trail. And I guess what I'm thinking is if you give some thought about strategically placing the facilities. I know you made reference to the restaurants, but to maybe both service the riverfront park area in addition to the tunnel park area.
That's another great comment. I think that it's probably a twofold approach. If you're in the town center, you don't want to go all the way out to the Heritage Trail to get to a restroom. And if you're at the Heritage Trail, we wouldn't mind you coming all the way into the town center, but it's a little bit far to come off that trail. So I can tell you right now, we're considering restrooms as part of the retail. I'd have to defer to Jonathan about the new apartment block. If that could be considered as part of the new apartment block to this parcel, right, that would be the ideal location. We are not part of that development team that's developing apartments, but that would be the ideal kind of civic amenity that could be added to that apartment that may help bring people up off the Heritage Trail, up the steps to kind of, don't quote me on this, but just say there's a zone that you can come in, you could easily have something acceptable there, but we'd have to review that as part of the other parcels in the master plan.
Yeah, I think in general, I mean, the distance from Tunnel Boulevard down to the river's edge, there is a drop there, of course, but we're not talking a significant distance there. So it may further activate the connection between river's edge and tunnel area.
Yeah, it's something that we'll consider, and I think we'll go back and work with the overall team to see where they're best suited for the project. But we know they need to come along with the public open space.
Yeah, Bob Russ here. Just a couple quick comments. Along with Marty and the others, you know, that surface in the dog park is of concern. And the best one I've seen is in New York City at Tompkins Park, where I used to live. And they used wood chips after a couple of different failed attempts at maintaining it. That seemed to be working the best. I have been to dog parks with the synthetic kind of rubber pellet playground material, and it in the summer sun, it does get quite a problem. And grass is beautiful as long as it lasts. So at some point there'll be either a lot of maintenance and or a switch over to a combination of materials that will stand the test of time. Yeah, sort of like your center top picture there, a combination of, you know, grass and or chips, or once it all gets kind of beaten, if it's really successful, you know, would transition to something kind of a natural material like that. Those are the two that seem to work the best in my experience. The other thing with the container, you know, during the winter, I assume that gets packed up and sits there. The tables and chairs go away into storage somewhere, and things reemerge in the spring. So there's a period there where that obviously is not as occupied and as active. So to the comment of, you know, trucks and or, you know, street food and a more kind of portable support to that, I'm curious. It's a great scheme, and it's certainly exciting. To be curious to see if it gets the foot traffic to maintain a cafe as kind of a semi-permanent location like that, rather than something a little bit more portable and comes and goes, you know, during peak hours. But, you know, good luck and kudos to giving it a try.
Yeah, Allison, is that something you want to speak to about the kind of the programming of this, you know, seasonally as well as year round?
Yeah, and you know, we see this as an all year round, 12-month a year operation. I think that for overall, we'd like to see kind of plug and play for a lot of pop-ups, and we can really activate both sides seasonally with some type of winter activation and summer activation. And that's something that we have had the fortune to kind of work on within our other locations and properties. But we do see this ideally as a 12-month operation. I know that it gets cold in Pittsburgh and rains a lot, but we're prepared to kind of hedge against that and go for the full 12 months.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, to your point though, does that mean heaters come in and some type of temporary heat kind of augments the winter cold to beat it back? I mean, with global warming, we're talking that Pittsburgh's going to become more like North Carolina. Yeah. That sounds great to me, but along with all the others.
Absolutely, and a lot of this is very operationally heavy, so, and which we have specialized in. So that's what kind of brings the success to this. Okay. Not just having someone come in with a food truck or a cart, but being able to activate it and program it for the full time, and having a team, a full support team there to do this and make it successful.
Oh, great.
Peter Kreuthmeyer here. I just have a couple comments. One, I love that you've pulled this together as a master plan with all of these different elements for a comprehensive parks and open space plan. I mean, it's always, you know, green space is great, but, you know, seeing it with all this life brought into it and the opportunities, I think is fantastic. So hats off to you on that. I have a question though. You brought it up on a couple of occasions. public art, entry sculpture, etc. Have you engaged the Office of Public Art here in Pittsburgh?
Allison, do you want to speak to that? Or Jonathan? I know that you guys have both been active in the art scene and what we were originally going to plan, but then put on hold.
Yeah, I can answer that. We've engaged a marketing group who has put us in touch with, who actually one is a Southside resident. It's Revive Marketing Group. They've put us in touch with the local museums, the children museums, and are introducing us to local artists. For instance, there's another local artist named Baron Bash, who's a Southside resident as well. We've been in talks with. Haven't engaged the local Office of Public Art, and would definitely be interested in being connected.
I think you want to do that. I mean, that's kind of their forte, is connecting artists with, you know, big ideas. So, and they have like tremendous depth and infrastructure in doing that. So yeah, I'd encourage you to reach out to them.
Yeah, appreciate that recommendation. We absolutely will.
Peter, this is Anthony, the neighborhood planner. Are you referring to, when you say the Office of Public Art, is it our division, one of our divisions in city planning, the Public Art and Civic Design Division, or is this something separate?
OPA, I don't know.
The Office of Public Art is a nonprofit.
Okay, that one. All right.
But I think too, at some point, you know, if you have structures, you may have to go before the Art Commission, right? Stephanie?
If it's on publicly owned land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other point I was going to make.
This is privately.
But Jonathan, I do want to echo Peter with the Office of Public Art. They really are great and have a lot of good ideas as to in a variety of ways, but also to get our projects moving. So I'll send you information to connect you with. I forget her name right now, but the
Renee.
No, I think Sally Ann.
Sally.
Renee.
Is it?
Oh,
Yes,
Sally. Yes.
Yeah, she's an alumni of our little shop here, but no, OPA does fantastic work. Just, you know, being a catalyst to connect things. So, and we've collaborated with OPA in the past on other, you know, public infrastructure projects. So it's just, you don't want to miss out on those opportunities. So yeah, please check them out.
There may be another opportunity to connect with, for instance, CMU's Art and Design Department that might prove fruitful also.
That's great.
Not seeing any questions or any hands raised. So I want to give everyone about 20 seconds to put in any further questions or raise your hand.
I just want to say, I chuckle when I think that, I still think of Southside Works as being new, and going down there, you know, there are things that are a bit weathered, but I still, again, think of it as being new as someone who grew up down here, but it really does have a great look. You know, that green space, it just looks really alive. So thank you for putting all of that together and for making it a part of Southside Works. So again, this project will be going to the Planning Commission. If there are any additional comments, you can always contact the Southside Community Council and also be part of the Planning Commission meeting once it's held. And again, we'll have 30 days to discuss this, and share information with Philip and Jonathan and others brief, and then share also our comments with the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the time. You know, this is one of the, you know, a fun project because it's about public space for all of us to use. So, you know, we welcome your comments because your comments will make the project stronger. So thank you guys for your time tonight.
And then just want to share that we will be putting this information up on our website. We are putting these meetings on our YouTube page. We have a monthly newsletter that you know, has a lot of information in it, and our remaining dam schedule for the year, surprisingly, we're almost at the end of the year. It's October 22nd, November 19th, and December 17th. And I do want to thank all of the presenters and of course, the Development Review Committee, the Local Review Committee, Southside Community Council board members and residents who took the time to see what's happening in the development of Southside. Stephanie and Anthony, thank you also.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing else,
You're welcome.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Bye-bye.